Where does the United States actually stand with Iran? Welcome to Oversight Tuesday, a new series from the Strategic Audit, where we step back from the headlines and take a closer look at the policies, decisions, and public information shaping our government. Today's question is simple. Where does the United States stand with Iran? If you ask 10 Americans that question today, you might get 10 different answers. Some believe the United States is already at war. Others believe this is a limited military operation. And many Americans simply aren't sure anymore. That's exactly why oversight matters. Over the past several months, Americans have watched reports of military strikes, attacks by Iranian-backed groups, sanctions, diplomatic negotiations, military deployments, and public statements that sometimes appear to point in different directions. Depending on which headlines you follow, it can feel like the situation changes every week. So instead of asking who is winning the political argument, let's ask a better question. What do we actually know? Today, we are auditing 5 questions. Have U.S. forces conducted military operations involving Iran or Iranian-backed groups? Has Congress authorized the use of military force? And what is the administration's current stated policy? What role are regional proxy groups playing? And perhaps most importantly, what risks exist for further escalation? Let's take these questions one at a time. Question 1. Have U.S. forces conducted military operations involving Iran or Iranian-backed groups? The answer is yes. The United States has conducted military operations involving Iranian-backed groups, and the conflict has included periods of direct confrontation involving Iran itself. But the oversight questions remain. What was the legal authority for these actions? What were the strategic objectives? And what is the plan moving forward? Military action is a decision. Strategy is what comes after. Question 2. Has Congress authorized the use of military force against Iran? The answer is no. Not through a new specific authorization for use of military force against Iran, sometimes referred to as OMF. This is one of the most important oversight questions. The Constitution gives Congress the authority to declare war, while the President serves as Commander-in-Chief. For decades, presidents of both parties have relied on existing authorities to conduct military operations, creating an ongoing debate over the balance between executive power and congressional oversight. That debate is happening again. Congress is now facing questions about funding availability and accountability, and whether lawmakers have enough information about the administration's military objectives and long-term strategy. Question 3. What is the administration's current stated policy? The administration has stated objectives that include protecting U.S. forces, deterring attacks, limiting Iran's military capabilities, and maintaining the possibility of diplomacy under certain conditions. But another oversight question remains. What is the long-term strategy? A military operation can address an immediate threat. A strategy must answer what happens next. Question 4. What role are regional proxy groups playing? This is one of the keys to understanding this conflict. Iran has built a network of regional partners and aligned armed groups, including the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and other armed groups operating in Iraq and Syria. These groups allow Iran to project influence throughout the region without relying solely on direct military confrontation. Their attacks on U.S. forces, regional partners, and commercial shipping have created additional risks of escalation. Question 5. What risks exist for further escalation? The greatest concern is that a limited conflict expands into a broader regional war. The risks include expanded attacks on U.S. forces, disruption of strategic shipping routes, higher global energy prices, cyber operations, greater involvement from regional powers, and perhaps most concerning, a miscalculation that neither side intended. But before we discuss strategy escalation and geopolitical consequences, we need to remember the human cost of these decisions. In national security debates, casualties become quickly numbers on a screen, a statistic, a headline. A brief mention before the next breaking story. But behind every number is a person. Someone who had a family waiting for them. Someone who had friends, memories, plans, and a future that they expected to live. According to reporting by Newsweek, 17 American service members have been killed during this conflict with Iran. Their names deserve to be spoken, not as a political talking point, not as a statistic in an argument, but as a reminder that decisions made in Washington have consequences carried by real people and their families. First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, 25, of Iwa Beach, Hawaii. Private Isabella Gonzalez, 19, of Carrollton, Texas. Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton, 30. Commander Gabriel Edwards, 40. Major John A. Klinner, 33 years old. Captain Ariana Savino, 31 years old. Tech Sergeant Ashley Pruitt, just 34 years old. Captain Seth Koval, 38 years old. Captain Curtis Angst, 30 years old. Tech Sergeant Tyler Simmons, just 28 years old. Sergeant Benjamin N. Pennington, 26. Major Jeffrey R. O'Brien, 45. Chief Warrant Officer Robert M. Marzin, 54 years old. Master Sergeant Nicole M. Amor. Sergeant Declan J. Cody, just 20 years old. Captain Cody A. Cork, 35. Sergeant First Class Noah L. Tegens, 42 years old. May we remember that every one of these names represents more than a casualty report. They represent people who answered a call to serve. They represent families who made sacrifices alongside them. And they represent a responsibility for those of us who debate foreign policy from a distance. Because asking questions about military decisions is not a criticism of the men and women who serve. It is part of honoring their service. Oversight means asking whether the decisions that place Americans in harm's way are lawful, necessary, strategically sound, and worthy of the sacrifices being asked. And that is where oversight matters most. Because asking questions about military decisions is not a criticism of those who serve. It is a responsibility to those who serve. The question is not simply whether military action occurred. The question is whether those decisions were lawful, necessary, strategically sound, and in the best interests of the American people. That is what Oversight Tuesday is all about. Not telling you what to think, giving you information you need to think for yourself. I'm Heath Curry, and this is part of the strategic audit, because informed citizens make stronger democracies.